At the corner of Market Street, the road continues on as Eppleton Row, leading to Downs Pit Lane. Many feet walked up the hill to Eppleton Colliery. The colliery consisted of 3 shafts, the Caroline, Jane and Lindsay. There were great difficulties experienced in sinking the shaft, which although started in 1825 would not open until 1833. It would be the last pit in the area to close in 1986. At least 198 men and boys lost their lives there. Hetton Nursery School. A quick right and left into the avenue, the nursery school stands on the Brewery Field, once the premises of Joseph Love, brewer in 1825, when Hetton had 5 breweries and 30 public houses. It was bought by Thomas Lamb in 1861. Mr. Lamb was born in Market Place, Hortley Spring, and later moved to Low Downs with his parents at the age of 10. He showed great promise as a musician and trained at Newcastle, having a successful music career before entering the hotel business and eventually buying the brewery. He was a very prominent, benevolent figure in Hetton and was buried in the graveyard of St Nicholas Church at the age of 85. The Independent Methodist Chapel on the opposite side of the road to the Independent Methodist Chapel was the Miners' Hall, built in 1882, at one time used by the Salvation Army and Christian Lay Church, before they built their own premises. The Salvation Army had appeared in the avenue by 1882, and out of them Christ's Army, who would build their own first barracks in 1884. They would soon need a larger building due to the surge in numbers. The name of the church would change when in 1866 they were accepted into membership of the Circuit of Christian Lay Churches. The new building was opened in 1889. Much of the work was done by miners after their shifts at the nearby Lyons and Eppleton collieries. Barton's, the Pavilion Theatre. Diagonally opposite to the chapel was the Pavilion Theatre. Ralph Barton of the Salt Works built the pavilion at the top of Richard Street in 1909 on land known as the Showfield. In November 1923, the Hetton and District Choral and Amateur Operatic Society performed the comic opera Highwayman Love, produced by Eric Mason. By popular request in March of the following year, they gave a repeat performance of The Dogs of Devon. The pavilion was both a theatre and a cinema. Silent films were accompanied by live music. In 1912, the musicians were Mr. Hodgkiss on the cornet, Mr. Barton violin, and Mr. Robson piano. The first manager was Mr. William Holton Lyndon Travers, father of the film stars Lyndon and Bill Travers. Lyndon would play in many Alfred Hitchcock films, paying tribute to him. Bill Travers is best known for his part in the 1966 film Born Free, which he made with his wife Virginia McKenna. They were lifelong wildlife conservationists. Barton's closed in 1959, unable to compete with the advent of TV and bingo. Richard Street. Walking down Richard Street, we come again to the route of the Stevenson Railway, the former site of a cabin where a man would appear when a train was coming to place a red flag in a hole in the road to warn traffic to stop. The King's Head and the Queen's Head pubs would be either side of the line. Hetton Working Men's Club and the War Memorial lies behind Richard Street to the left. The new club was built behind Richard Street and opened on Saturday, April the 15th, 1911. Tragically, James Smith, an old man who lived in Barrington Terrace, fell dead in the club that very day about 7 p.m. In 1957, the club was partially burnt down. As a temporary measure, the Old Comrades Club in Market Street, which was empty at the time, was used by the club until their own premises were rebuilt and refurbished the following year. Hetton Big Club, as it is locally known, to distinguish it from other social clubs in Hetton, provided a wide variety of interests and activities to its members and their families. Not only did it offer some of the best music and vaudeville, but it had a full-size bowling green and snooker and billiard tables. There were a number of music performances held within its grounds, and good use was made of the, now demolished, bandstand. The main World War I memorial was established within its grounds, with names of the fallen in World War II added later. Through the alleyway to Front Street we passed the Brewers Arms. In 1840, in the yard behind the Brewers Arms, there was Collett's Theatre, where plays such as Murder in the Red Barn and Maria Martin were performed. Bedford, once the premises of the Literary and Scientific Reading Room, which opened in 1849 to enable illiterate miners to educate themselves. Heron's Frozen Foods. Formerly the National and Barrington School, built by the Hetton Coal Company and opened in 1834, a plaque on the wall displays the talents of Bob Paisley, a former pupil and one-time successful manager of Liverpool FC. Hetton Mining Heritage Statue. Almost all traces of mining have disappeared from the area. The statue is a tribute to and reminder of the sacrifices made by the men and women who built the coal mining community and fought for many of the things we take for granted today. One boy, George Taylor, was interviewed in the Barrington School, the Heron Foods building, for the Children in Mines Act of 1842. He was 6 years old and worked in Elmore Colliery. Started at 12 o'clock at night, coming out at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. The schoolmaster said he often found him asleep at his desk. The Colliery Inn, built about 1826, all inquests and official enquiries relating to the colliery were held there. The police court took place upstairs in the Colliery Inn every other Bath Tuesday, officiated by Mr. Jobson, Superintendent of Police, and the Magistrate Rector Nicol. Superintendent Thomas Johnson of Hetton was identified in Slater's Directory 1855 as being in charge of the Hortley Spring Division. Travellers were once able to find accommodation there for themselves and their horses. St Nicholas Church was built in 1899 to replace the original Chapel of Ease of 1831. It once stood here in the graveyard. It was declared redundant in 2000 and devastated when arsonists struck in 2006. Now demolished, the foundation stones were laid by Sir Lindsay Wood and Thomas Lamb, the brewer. St Nicholas and Laburnum House. It is said that Nicholas Wood lived in St Nicholas House when he first came to Hetton in 1822 to advise on the sinking of the Lions Colliery and the building of the line. We can find no evidence to support this claim. At that time, the house was owned by Mrs. M. Bowes Barrington, who also owned Hetton Hall. Nicholas Wood did live there. The tomb of Nicholas Wood. Nicholas Wood became managing director of the Hetton Coal Company in 1844 and resided at Hetton Hall, at that time owned by Mrs. M. Bowes Barrington until his death. Nicholas Wood attempted to improve the social conditions of the mining community in Hetton. He emphasised the importance of education and promoted the building of schools for children and pitmen. He was a close confidant of George Stevenson, who apprenticed his son Robert to him in 1818. He promoted safety in mines and was instrumental in the establishment of the North of England Institute of Mining and Mechanical Engineers, otherwise known as NEIMME, in Westgate Road, Newcastle upon Tyne, and became the Institute's first president. In his memory, the Neville Hall was renamed Wood Memorial Hall, where a monumental statue sits in pride of place. Nicholas Wood died in London on December the 19th, 1865, and was buried in St Nicholas Churchyard, Hetton, 4 days later, where his tomb still stands. A project has been started to renovate the tomb. His youngest son, Lindsay Wood, later Sir Lindsay Wood, replaced him as managing partner of the Hetton Coal Company and, like his father, was keen to promote the social welfare of the community. Office Place. The North Hetton Coal Company used some of the buildings in this area. They changed use for St John's Ambulance and then the Air Cadet Squadron. The colliery manager's house was at Glenside. The Wesley Chapel was built in 1824. In 1839, when the famous preacher Peter Mackenzie visited Hitton, the attendance was so great that the congregation went into a nearby field, as the church could not accommodate half the number who came. In 1859, a Sunday school was built alongside the chapel on the left and housed 400 scholars. It was not only a school but also a library and reading room containing 380 volumes. The chapel closed in 1965 and has since been converted into flats. The Masonic Hall. The new Masonic Lodge was consecrated on the 12th of December 1904 at the Miners' Hall, Richard Street. Reverend Bowker was installed as the first master of Bernard Gilpin Lodge. The new Masonic Hall was opened 19th of December 1906. The building was lit by gas.